Welcome, everyone. This is another one of our webinars with Henry Stewart events, and we will talk about the value you can get out of DAM integrations and workflow automations. I am Bülent Dogan. I am the founder and the architect at SignGate. And as Theo mentioned, OneTech is a product, and OneTech is an integration platform built for the digital asset management ecosystem. I also have Meg Morrissey and Grace Wilson with me. They can also introduce themselves. Maybe Meg, you can start.
Hi, I'm Meg Morrissey. I am currently the DAM manager for United Airlines via Creative Circle. I am managing their enterprise level photography library. I've been in DAM for about a decade, a little over at this point, and I have been all over the place, vendor, in-house, librarian, you name it, I've been there.
Thank you, Meg. Grace?
Hi, I'm Grace Wilson. I'm the Director of Content Marketing at the International Fund for Animal Welfare, also known as IFA. We are a global nonprofit focused on wildlife rescue and biodiversity conservation. We are operating globally, and we help animals and people thrive together around the world. So before this, I was the Global Digital Asset Manager for IFA. So I have a lot of experience with the DAM. And before joining IFA, I was the head of digital collections at James Madison University Libraries in Virginia. So while I was there, I developed a digital curation course and have published in the Journal for Digital Media Management on an open source DAM that we developed at JMU. So looking forward to this panel.
Thank you. And we have a very large experience gathered here. We have been working in this industry for a long time, and I am going to focus mostly on integrations and automations within the DAM industry, within the DAM workflows, and that's really going to be our focus. So I'll first start with a couple of the things that we usually think about when DAM integrations are in discussions. We talk about a couple of the benefits, and those benefits are usually, this is a very simple set of benefits, but improving the efficiency and collaboration, those are the basic things that we go with, and faster time to market. It might be a commercial or it may be non-profit organization, but it doesn't matter. Getting things done as fast as you can is usually the goal. And optimizing asset management and distribution, taking the work of managing potentially millions of assets and making that work seamlessly and efficiently is the goal here. And I will ask the other panelists here, but I want to switch over to this slide, and I want to keep the slide on the screen because many of our integrations, automations, and efficiencies that we get out of those are really around the digital asset lifecycle. When we are managing our assets, the automations that we introduce usually helps us with this lifecycle. How can we make this better? How can we make this easier? So first, I'll start with Meg. Just as a starting point, I can ask Meg, what are the efficiencies that you typically see? And you can start considering, for example, the ideation phase or creation phase of assets. And then what do you see gives the most value typically to organizations when it comes to digital asset management workflows?
Well, ideation, a lot of it is not just planning, particularly in photography, it's inspiration. And that is one of the goals of our photography library is providing inspiration to our creatives, to our photographers, being able to create that. We create contact sheets and pre-production lookbooks, things that show our inspiration and what we're hoping to get out of a photo shoot using Adobe. So being able to have an integration where we can pull in assets that are, inspiring, that are give kind of the look and feel of what we want, especially if we're doing a reshoot because of, for example, a new club lounge at an airport. Um, Things that worked in the last shoot, we may want to pull in as inspiration or from other similar shoots, and being able to have that integration allows them to quickly do that, especially without having to download things and upload. And, as soon as something's downloaded onto a machine, we no longer have tracking. So being able to avoid that is always nice.
Right. And how about you, Grace? Have you done any integrations in the past or worked with in the ideation phase or planning, ideation, uh, inspiration, as well as create?
Absolutely. Sure. We have, so many stories of individual animals, rescue stories, things that we have been tracking through the years that we also use as inspiration when we're developing new campaigns, new fundraising materials. And so having that integration to be able to pull them quickly into different systems is really a time saver for us. Especially, being able to go in and out seamlessly with file transfer services is really nice, as well as creative tools. I think that's a really big one for us to just have that integration at hand.
And how about the project management tools? Because typically it gets kicked off any project that you want to kick off. Let's say you're creating a brochure or some flyer. Usually it gets into with a creative brief into a project management tool and then gets assigned to a creative team. So what integrations or automations you would like to see, or what are the things that you have seen that gave value?
Well, with project management tools, it's always amazing to have that integration. There's approval workflows and, the conversations that you have back and forth with a stakeholder during asset creation, being able to have all of that tracked in one place and being able to have that connection between a final asset and the provenance of how it was created, why it was created, when it was created, is always amazing and really saves a lot of time. Because we have asset tracking in so many digital asset management systems, that also allows us to understand what the cost per use becomes based on how often is it downloaded, how often is it shared, if there's an integration with the CMS for websites, what are the, how many impressions are we getting? So project management tools can really help with understanding how our content is doing and making sure that we can plan it efficiently.
I would agree with all of that, and I would say it also just really helps us track our time and ensure that our time is aligned with our organizational priorities. We get, so many video requests. For example, we do in-house video production for our different projects, and so being able to connect the final assets in the dam with the project management system just gives a lot of people an easier entryway into finding what they're looking for quickly at a glance without needing to search a separate system.
Yeah. So through the project management system, the ability to see the content that is relevant to your project is important. It saves time. And then being able to do approvals and then have those be transferred over to the DAM system is also a major time savers, not to download again and upload again. Those are really painful tasks most of the time. That's many of the integrations are trying to prevent that manual work and mistakes that may happen throughout that. I will also throw in the AI. I know this is conceptually nowadays everybody starts with a draft using AI, the generative AI. So we have some customers and even internally for our marketing purposes, we start with something inspirational It's interesting. I'll mention my wife. My wife is working on a product, and she's going to be creating a beverage. And to be able to create that beverage, the first thing she does is goes into AI and gets inspired by typing in kind of the creative brief. So part of the process now is also incorporating both the assets that are in the dam, but then leveraging those and generating new inspirational content that can be placed into your project management system as a starting point for your creative team, or to produce a similar content that might be potentially leveraged to create final output from those projects and campaigns. And I feel like one of the main purposes of digital asset management system is to get the most out of your assets, right? The repurposing of assets. So to be able to tap into the existing uh, data and not be blind about what is already there is really important in the inspiration ideation stage. And it touches into the creation. But one big aspect of a dam system is also metadata. So at this point, not maybe ideation, but there's all that metadata that already gets created. Have you seen integrations where metadata, even as early as at the creation of the asset, can be streamlined, automated, integrated with other systems? Maybe Meg, you can give your experience.
Yes, I'll start with I'm a librarian by training, so metadata is my happy place. Data governance is something that's so important. And one thing I always strive for is getting that metadata as far upstream as I can so that we are accessing the original instead of a copy of a copy of the original where things might have gotten lost in translation. Um, Embedded metadata and having integrations or even just features within a dam that will allow for mapping is incredibly helpful and a real time saver for us. And actually having the option to cleanse that data that's embedded is a feature of some of the dams I've worked with and has really been helpful in just making sure that things that were important to, say, photographers or creatives, but aren't really important downstream, we can clean that up and make sure that that data is usable. Additionally, the data may not come from the actual asset creation. It may come from other governing entities within the organization. I worked in media and entertainment with streaming systems, a couple of them. And what was most helpful for getting things out for leveraging AI was plugging into other systems of governed metadata that was being handled by other librarians. I don't want to reinvent the wheel within a system. I want integrations. I want to plug into single sources of truth for data. And that allowed us in one streaming system to plug all of the data in. It was easily searchable. We had unique identifiers for every title, all of that. We plugged that into the digital asset management system, used the combination of multiple pieces of data and AI to validate the title cards that you see on when you're selecting something in a streaming service. If you're speaking English, making sure that title is spelled correctly and everything looks good. If it's in Japanese, pulling from a system that says this is the translation that we are using for this title. It's been approved. This is what you should use. And being able to use AI to validate that those cards, that the artist who created it did it correctly. And then we did have an integration with that into our actual platform. So every night things were getting updated and new content was being put on, and all of that went through our digital asset management system. We could only do that because we had multiple integrations regarding data. I have worked on one system where a title card was misspelled, and it was not a pleasant experience. It did actually help us get the funding for the AI.
Right.
So it's very important to have those integrations and remove manual labor that where humans were imperfect, something might get passed over.
Yes, I would agree with that. And for us, we have a lot of complex usage rights for our assets. We work with a lot of implementing partners around the world, and based on their region or cultural sensitivities, or how if the project is actively being funded, there are a lot of moving pieces in the metadata. So the integrations are key to keeping everyone's information up to date. You know, once you download it locally, if you don't have that metadata in your desktop folder, you might not know that an animal has, you know, been taken to a soft release site, or there's a new element of their story. We really use the dam for tracking a lot of that story information, and so it's so key to be able to integrate it seamlessly. One thing we're also working on is refining our naming conventions so that our metadata will work more seamlessly with some of our ad platforms, and then allow us to get better analytics back on the type of content that we're using.
I want to add one other thing regarding integrations, especially with data. The type of integration, is it dynamic? How often does it update? Can make a difference if you have a tight time to market, making sure that that's been updated recently enough that you know it's accurate and that you can trust it.
Right. And source of truth is really important here. Like the studio type of workflows that we have seen, the episodic data that tells you all that this is the title of the movie or the episode or the series, all that information is sitting in another source of truth, title management system, episodic data management system. Same thing applies to, uh, let's say you're looking at a museum content and DAM, and they look at the content, the collection management system as the source of truth for all of that information. If you are a product company, you look at a product information management system for the source of truth for that. And as you said, how frequently this data gets updated behind the scenes, and then you want that reflected in the DAM so that people have the latest, greatest way to search for the content and to be able to gain access to that. You need to minimize that effort for keeping up with that and leveraging the source of truth from other systems. I think the biggest value there is avoiding mistakes. As you said, those type of mistakes can cost a lot, especially, for example, one example I had was a product being sent out with the wrong image just because it was assigned improperly. The sales on that was sent out to Amazon went down just because the images were wrong. And that was it. We think our job is just to manage images, but it impacts sales now if you tie it back into the digital supply chain. So it is really important to make sure that the automation and the integrations can do this a little better than us. And there is that validation. Now the AI can also validate it because I've seen many SKUs assigned to product images wrongly. And it's pretty hard to catch that unless you're looking at every image before it gets out the door. Those are difficult tasks, but adding AI can potentially also help where integrating to an AI system that can visually verify can also provide good improvements to the workflows. And in terms of managing, this metadata is really the key in integrations, automations. There is the main issue I want to bring up with integrations. It is the challenge in integrations is the taxonomy, the language, and I know Meg loves this very well because we worked together in a past project, and it was a mess to get one system to talk to the other system in the same language. Whatever you call somewhere may be called differently in another system. So another integration point might be the governance systems that can be built within the company, like a taxonomy management system, to be able to call the same thing that the company owns as an asset. It can be a movie title in that case, or it can be a product name, or it can be a collection name. Any of those, if it's typed in manually, it can become a big headache. And I've seen people type in almost like 10, 15 metadata elements that is already in another system manually and create all kinds of headaches for them down the line. It's impossible to keep them up to date with whatever changes are happening, because product names change, product attributes change, collection names can be updated. All those needs to be synced and maintained within the system, and should be automated ideally. Otherwise, we'll have a ton of people, an army of people managing them, right? Uh, the other aspect of this is I don't know if you have seen that. I want to understand expiration dates, rights for managing assets. What have you seen? Maybe I can ask with Grace first this time. Any issues with rights and integrations or automations that can save you headaches?
Yeah, that is an area that we do not have integrations for yet, but would be really big for us. Right now, we're managing it through DAM notifications, emails, and whatnot. But for example, our CMS right now is not integrated with our DAM, and that creates a huge amount of headaches in that area. If we've, just licensed something for fundraising for a certain amount of time, and then everybody has to go in and make sure it's down everywhere that it's been used. So it's really not ideal, and an integration would be the perfect solution and something that we're looking at as we come into a new fiscal year for us in July and look at migrating.
Mm-hmm. And Meg?
That's a really great point, Grace. Something that I'm always keeping an eye on is building, planting the seeds for future automation. As things mature, we get more funding, business priorities shift, um, and being able to have the scaffolding through data, through getting those integrations. Um, Something I would love to see is having that data source, for example, a product number, a unique ID for a product number applied to an image of that product, the correct one, and having that pushed to a CMS based on that product number and additional pieces of metadata. This is something that's a major pain point. Or a couple of places I've worked with where there are, for example, multiple versions of one image. And with the metadata, we can indicate this goes in this place, this goes in this place. You use this specifically for this area of the end product site, and being able to then leverage automation through a CMS that pulls that, instead of having to have, for example, a human go into the DAM, type it in, download the correct one, upload it into the CMS. And as we all know, every human step is an option, an opportunity for error. And now it's downloaded in a place where we can't track it.
Right, right. That goes against compliance sometimes, and then you don't
Yeah.
know where your content may end up, as well as if you are dealing with sensitive data, such as personal images of your employees in Europe, let's say, for global companies, and there is GDPR concerns. All those type of things can cause major headaches if that laptop is stolen, that they just downloaded an image and it ends up somebody's website for any reason. And now the integrations also include AI systems where you can uh, have the AI visually look at all your company websites, properties, maybe your e-commerce sites, and compare that data with what you have in the DAM to check whether those assets have expired, whether you need to take them down or those assets have been deleted from the dam for one reason or the other, or has been archived, to notify you or to let you know that there are some compliance issues here. Those are also good integrations that are happening with maybe rights management systems or AI systems with computer vision that can help you kind of prevent the issues before they happen or warn you that there are issues that you can take action on. And as we talk about the CMSs, I'm going to start talking about the right side of the wheel, which is distribution. And CMS is typically the major endpoint where we want to send our assets because they get used. But there are many other places, campaigns, ads. What are the typical distribution-related automations you have seen? I'll start with Meg this time. What are the efficiencies you get with those?
There's a few things that I've seen with good integrations, and just other features. Systems with template creation allows to very quickly create something that's going to go out. Some things it's there's a general structure you're going to follow, and instead of reinventing the wheel, being able to use an integration to connect that with your assets, it can be a major time saver, and also can help avoid the situation where someone really likes an image and they download it onto a, say, creative server, and it goes out into the world, and a year later it's getting used, and the employee within that image works for a different company now, but it's on a billboard or it's posted on Instagram. And that is something that an integration with a rights management tool, an integration with platforms that allow us to post things quickly and to validate. Something that some rights management system tools have that I really love is that ability to check, okay, we saw this image we don't want on our site. Let's just check the rest of the site real quick. And being able to do that quickly without we have a human being without an integration clicking on every link and validating the images, and that takes hours. So being able to do that, being able to automate that, and again, creative tools, being able to automate that with an integration so that they're pulling the things that we're hand curating with art directors to make sure that they're getting what they need and that they understand how they're allowed to use it, is really important and a massive time saver for us. No one wants to get their heart set on an image to find out 3 days and 8 hours of research later that they can't even use it.
Right. And without the integration, you have to actually tap into people's knowledge or ask them to check things for you without collecting that data into the dam, bringing that data into the dam. It becomes a problem to be able to retrieve content. How about you, Grace? Any distribution-related automations?
We rely really heavily on just a file transfer integration with our dam. We share a lot of our assets very often with media when we're putting out a new report somewhere. It might be with other partners that are requesting imagery we've taken from a project. It could be an external video editor or report designer that we're working with. We usually don't give affiliates access to our dam because there is such a variety, and there's there's 50 years of assets represented in there, so that's just a lot for someone to work through. We prefer for someone internal to help set the selection, and then they're able to export it in a way that has an expiration date. It can give you a download receipt. You can have an access code. You can export the metadata along with the assets. So especially for something like a press release where we need to make sure we're distributing credit and caption information accurately, to have that integration is a huge time saver. Someone's not, downloading, retyping information, making errors, not sure what they need to do. It's a very streamlined process for us, and it does save us a ton of time because we spend lots and lots of time distributing assets.
and you're avoiding the same download upload again. That's
Yep,
another,
absolutely.
right? And in the distribution scenarios, there is also distribution of content to e-commerce sites or your portals that you use. CMS, you mentioned that you couldn't connect yet, but that's part of your plan. Uh, there are uh, various ways you can deal with these things manually, is what a lot of people are still doing, even using Excel sheets. I've seen that even with the largest companies you can think of, they use Excel sheets to manage the delivery of content, even with product information or with uh, various other mechanisms, FTP sites. But the value is really, that's main issue here. How do you actually put that as a value so that you can actually realize that I can turn this into an investment for my company? Because the difficulty that we are all facing is, I might be the vendor, but I face the same problem. I want to do the project. I can see there's value, but the main important thing here is internally, you are going to serve your customers, but the money you spend on integrations and automations needs to be justified. And you need to be able to put some dollars in front of people to make that right decision, saying that, okay, this is going to save us time and money. How do you go about, for example, SCMS integration? How do you turn that into a project that gets approved? How do you go through the convincing process?
Sure. It's really tough. Usually the people that are doing the downloading and uploading are really easy to convince that this is something we need to solve, but they are often not the people holding the purse strings. So what I found useful in the past is finding an ally, somebody who is supportive on the ground level doing the work of this integration, and get them to really track their time that they're spending on that. And then you can multiply that time by the number of people who are working with the CMS, uploading, regional sites and whatnot. And then that's a number that you can take to your leadership and say, we're spending this much time of people's salaries uploading and downloading assets. And then in addition to that, you have the risk management piece of inaccurate, human error. So together with those, I have been able to make a case for a stronger consideration of DAM integrations as we look at new CMSs. And it's how I've been able to get DAM improvements done in the past as well.
That's a good approach.
To add to that, when looking at that risk management, I've had really informative conversations with legal departments for those organizations to get numbers around how much has inappropriate asset use cost us in the past, and what are the costs that we can't put a number around but we know are important to leadership, things like brand reputation, things along those lines, making sure that if we're pulling down a post, it already exists in the internet. There's no such thing as a post that hasn't been screenshot by someone. So being able to get ahead of those things is really important, and we can put some numbers around that in terms of losing followers or things along those lines. Regarding so getting leadership, one of the strategies that I've found through trial and error has been making sure to really hone in on their priorities and to tie any of my requests to, company and team strategies. What do you want to do for the year? This is going to help us. We're updating our website. Well, this is a great time to do an integration with the CMS platform and to plug this into the digital asset management system. And Grace, like you said, tracking that time. That has been really helpful in multiple scenarios for me, understanding, okay, this is one piece of content and it took 12 hours of, hourly rate contractor time, for example. where we can actually tell them exactly how much this cost and give them an idea of what your return on investment is for these assets. It costs this much to produce them, and then it's costing this much to make sure we can actually use them and to serve them up. Divided by how often we're getting those requests, this is your cost per use versus, what it would be if this was self-serve, if we had rights management where we weren't all doing the same research across different parts of the organization. Things along those lines, really tying it into this is what it's going to do for you, and being able to, I've learned the hard way, really hone in on what you're going to get and socialize it up the chain so that you're not unprepared when you show it to the people pulling the purse strings, the folks who are working with them regularly and have an idea of kind of how their mind works and what questions they may pose to you, and being able to be really prepared to respond to those in the moment can really help. It also helps to establish trust. If they know that you've gone through all of this, I've found I get a little bit less pushback because they hired me because I've been doing this forever and I know what I'm talking about, but they need something that proves it. And then they start to get some trust so that I can eventually say, I know this because I've done this for 10 years and I can give you some examples, but this is what you're looking at, and getting a little bit more buy-in.
And I've seen vendors do this. Larger vendors typically have a value management office. So you can tap into the vendor to help you out. They can actually provide resources and they can say that here is what you have been spending on the system and here is what we think you are getting out of it. They actually have formulas and other things that they ask you kind of questions. That's essentially what you need to do. But bringing a chart to a discussion with your boss and saying that, oh, this is the ROI you will get is very effective, actually. I've seen that happen when I was working with our customers. They brought in a chart that showed that in 3 months they will have a return on investment just because they were spending so much time on manual work. They were able to quantify it as you have suggested with those strategies. Number of people doing this, how many assets are they working on? It looks so simple, right? You spend 5 more minutes and you get it done. But then you multiply it to the number of people doing this, their average salaries, and number of assets you need to do it. And it turns out to be a big number that it's fairly easy to justify the spend in those cases. And the last piece of this is when we are coming back to the life cycle retrieval of content. And this is retrieval, archival, we can talk about those both, but the retrieval part of it really depends on the metadata. And we talked about it a lot. Enriching the assets is a key component of finding the assets, right? I have seen actually people swap digital asset management systems just because they can't find content. They blame the digital asset management system, saying that the search doesn't work. It doesn't bring me the results I want. Look, I just saw a demo. It brings everything back. Right. In the demo, you fill in all the right information, you ask the right question, and then it gives you the tailored answer back. But in the typical digital asset management system, if you leave it alone and you don't have automation, you don't have the enrichment processes in place, your assets become very lonely, left alone. They became kind of orphans from their life just because they have no metadata to define what they do. So the search becomes very difficult, and then the blame is on the dam or the team saying that, oh, this doesn't work. So what have you seen that really worked well for you, making that search experience, retrieval experience well for your users, both manually, but processes maybe, as well as automations that you have incorporated? I'll start with Grace this time.
Sure. The metadata is key. We have a lot of controlled vocabularies that we use that are pulled from our programs, the coding that they use to delineate which program, and then within the program which project something is part of. So we use a lot of tags in our system to help people find what they need, but it's I mean, I'm always doing more education as more people come on and as we hire new video editors who are uploading assets into the system. It's really key to do the education piece with them about if you don't enter this information, nobody will find the thing you're making and it will not get reused and it will not be able to, be part of this asset lifecycle in a more proactive way. So it's just it's a constant struggle, but it is something that is so important, really the key for your dam. It's not something that can be alleviated by switching tools for sure. So just something that we're always working on.
Meg?
Yeah, having that advocacy piece is so important. I once worked with a director who was helping us get so many resources to really hone in on metadata governance across the company because he was really good at making metadata sexy to leadership. And I still wish I could do that to the point where he can, but it's a goal, I'm working on it. Um, Making sure that across all the way through the asset life cycle, you're setting standards for what the metadata should be and the expectations and that education piece. In a previous life at a vendor, we used to get those complaints of the dam doesn't work, and we would look at their metadata and say with love and kindness, um, garbage in, garbage out. If an asset can't be located, it doesn't exist. And this is a place where having access to data is so important for that advocacy, for improving content ROI, and doing monthly search audits to see what are people typing in and does that align with our data structure. Having someone in charge of metadata integrity and making sure that that person owns that governance has been really helpful for me in the past because you've got different types of users in there and you need someone who's in charge of accommodating all of them. Um, it, Search audits, and also, sorry, I'm checking my notes because I had a lot of ideas. Understanding what your platform can do and how their search works and making sure that your data model is taking advantage of that and really performing at its best. Is natural language processing available where someone can just type in, show me a passenger boarding a plane, and that's exactly what they get, versus some of the more basic searches that are still kind of getting enhanced and getting to that level where they're going to search each word as an option. Show me everything that has search and passenger and boarding and plane. And users are going to think your system is broken. And that's a time for advocacy with, seeing what resources you have to improve that at that initial level, making sure your metadata is aligned for that, and educating your end users and using what features you do have to be able to accommodate for that. One other thing with that is synonyms, and seeing if you have that option. A lot of dams do, some don't. It's always worth asking. And plugging into, as we mentioned, taxonomy tools allows you to really beef up search without having to constantly enter 3 keywords when you really have one preferred.
Right. And I think as AI progresses more and gets more into the dam space, natural language search is not something that many dam systems was able to do so far, but they are now hopefully will be able to incorporate AI search into the mix, and we'll be able to train the AI to leverage those synonyms or word expansions to based on your own business, so that you'll be able to refer to a stewardess versus the flight attendant. Those type of words might have been used over the years and changed over the years, and you have now the new terminology people use, and it changes. AI will be able to handle those type of nuances in those
Yeah,
search.
in media and entertainment, people change their names all the time for many reasons, and being able to support users who don't know what Sean Combs is calling himself these days is highly effective.
Right. Product names change, many other things change. So that type of knowledge that you can put into the search, besides what the user is searching on, will potentially eliminate a lot of these problems. And being able to use a taxonomy service, in many cases I refer to that, is important. Many systems don't, or many organizations don't have a taxonomy system. We are seeing more coming up where there is governance around it, and the data is stored in a very structured way, and all these synonyms and the context changes that happen throughout the history of the company is captured there. And then you can leverage that data for either training your AI or training your search engine. All those are hopefully going to be easier within the DAM systems also. I do have questions coming in, so I'll read one of them. Can you provide clarity on the distinct functionalities each system offers and share insights on scenarios where a standalone PMS, project management system is what I'm assuming, is essential versus when the DAM system can suffice, but the PMS might be product management system also, I'm not sure. But there are many different systems out there. And I think the main question here is, what do you consider is the source of truth, and what can provide the best value to your users? We have seen many times DAM systems trying to become PIM systems, product information management systems trying to become DAM systems, or collection management systems becoming DAM systems. And not every vendor can focus on that many areas at once, and you need to sacrifice something at the end, usually. There are a couple systems out there that might be doing both very well, but my take on this is that this DAM, for what it does in terms of managing digital assets, is a must-have now in the technology stack of every company. First of all, for the marketing sense, you need to have that. And then second is for product data, product information, you do need to have that. And as well as for, if you think about museums or even the studios and other places, those are critical pieces of technologies that you have to have as part of your core components in your company. Any other ideas, Meg, Grace? The question was about, can you provide clarity on the distinct functionalities each system offers? Yeah, that.
Thank you. So regarding when to try to find a single system that does this all versus doing integrations with best in breed, I typically prefer best in breed. Sometimes I don't have a choice regarding if that project management system is used across an entire department for many different things, and your digital asset management system does not serve all of those needs. You work with the tech stack that you have, and sometimes you sacrifice using a tool that or an aspect of a single platform that you really like in the name of adoption and change management and serving the greater good for that department or that organization.
Any comments, Grace? I have more questions. And actually, there's an expansion of PMS, production management system. So that's, I'm still not sure exactly what it may refer to, because production can be the creative production. There is also the product production, which it gets into ERPs and other systems as well. So, but I'll ask, Grace, do you want to say something? You came out of mute. Okay. So I will ask the next question. And do you recommend starting with pilots and testing small groups or large shifts to the new, better tool? I have found it hard with pilots. People don't have time and don't want change. I think we have seen that before. At least I've seen it in many places. The no time. We have a pilot, but we will not test it. So, Meg, any comments? Have you been part of pilots? What have you experienced?
I'm very crawl, walk, run with my rollouts, and I definitely prefer to do that testing phase, to do that with a small group. It gives me a lot more time to do that advocacy, to learn who all of the other groups are that we need to talk to, and starting with the people who have the largest pain points and are the most likely to be engaged. That is, or when their hand is forced because someone doesn't want to renew a contract for a legacy system and needs to get things over sooner rather than later. Starting with that first group, and just as a librarian and taxonomist and DAM expert, building the scaffolding to expand as we do scale up, as you bring more people in, but making sure that you're really nailing those initial needs and addressing the hardest pain points as soon as you can, and then getting that initial group in.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it helps to gather the stakeholders that you can gather. And in the past, I've just leveraged my personal relationships with people that might be resistant to the system, but kind of leaned on them for a favor to get them involved in a pilot group. I've seen it done both ways. I've been part of implementations in both ways, and always would prefer to do a pilot, because otherwise there are just so many things that come up at such a large scale that it becomes just impossible to fix everything. And you get so much more buy-in from the wider group once you've been able to say X and Y people have signed on, they've looked at it, we know that, it may not be perfect, but we have made a really good faith effort to include everyone and get their feedback and hear their pain points.
Mm-hmm. And I agree both of your points. The resistance to change is also a big factor. People do not want to change, as the question also said, and that is a painful process. But if you are methodical, you show the benefits, there will be a pushback always. But more training, more time allocation from the higher ups to open up their time and to kind of show them the better way of doing things will eventually win them over. Hopefully they will be able to get their time in with a pilot. I agree that pilots are the best way to verify if the product that you are going to be introducing is going to work. As a vendor, I don't like the pilots because nobody puts the time in, with the same reason. But making that very concise, very time limited, and saying that if you give me 2 weeks of your time where you can test as much as you want and you only spend 2 hours every day, that should be sufficient to go through a pilot in most cases. And finding that person that has the most to lose is the important thing here. And one last piece that I can bring up is the security and compliance, integrations, automations, any concerns or things that came up due to compliance, security, like the desktop, people download all the things on their desktop and then you might be out of compliance, you might be out of, you're losing assets or not being able to track them. Similar to that, do you have other scenarios where uh, security, compliance, governance needs to be incorporated into the automations and integrations that you have considered or you have worked with?
I always try to make sure that we've got the right voices at the table, not only for building the integration, but for managing it long term. And that does roll into governance. I've launched governance programs for very large enterprise digital asset management systems, and very quickly you start to see who the folks are downstream who may never sign into the dam, or upstream when they need to be, like making sure they're included, making sure that the changes that we make based on shifting needs or additional opportunities, making sure that there's no negative impact to that, and understanding what's coming down the pipe is very helpful with, including upstream folks. Governance across like the digital supply chain. Um, that's the risk you take with having all of these pieces being governed in silos and making decisions in silos. It can break that automation, and you've wasted time and money if you're not putting the people and process into this. You can't just rely on the tech. None of this is set it and forget it. And I think that's something that I find myself needing to advocate for. It's not a project, it's a program.
Mm-hmm. Uh, anything, Grace? We have one more question that came back, but
No, go ahead.
okay. Are there integration or tools for metadata that use AI and are proficient in dealing with more conceptual art? Our organization deals a lot with illustrations that are highly stylized, and we have found that AI models do not deliver accurate metadata, which ruins our searches.
Um, I take all AI metadata with a heavy grain of salt. I don't think it's mature enough to lean on without heavy oversight and governance. I think it is something I would be very excited to learn about, getting a source for AI tagging, for example, object recognition, all of that, being able to get something that I can plug into my dam and I can train with my assets. And if anyone has one of those or knows of one, I would love to hear about it. That's the biggest problem that we have with that is the AI is not quite ready. The AI hasn't been trained. Everywhere I've worked has had specialty, like industry specific metadata, and the generic plug and play don't accommodate for that. And being able to really customize that would be amazing. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer of a solve that exists.
Anything, Grace?
No, I don't know. I don't know of one either. That's something that would be a huge help to us, but our assets are so specialized as well.
And as you said, trained models is what we need. Generic models don't work. There are dam systems out there that I know of. I can write that in private maybe without specifying names, that can do this type of feedback loop where you can tag something generically, but then you can feed more tags and you can train it and bring back more clever tags next time. So I'm going to wrap up just because we ran out of time, but these are all the tools that we have partially talked about, maybe that we need to have integrations in the DAM ecosystem. And all these tools are tools that we have built our One Tech system as an integration platform that you can leverage to connect all these different solutions. And with pre-built templates, simplified content flows, without writing any code, you can put together all these integrations. And if you can find value with those integrations in your company, you can reach out to us and we can talk about how you can get that value brought up into your company as well. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. And thank you, Meg and Grace, for your time. And hopefully this was valuable. The recording will be sent to everyone. And have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.